This is feedback from your lessons yesterday, everyday math lessons. I think we need to revisit what concrete means. Remember that concrete means that students are given the opportunity to make, to touch, to build using manipulatives. Worksheets are not concrete. As a rule, worksheets tend to be abstract symbolic. Some worksheets are semi-concrete, but worksheets are never concrete. Effective math lessons move from the concrete to the representational to abstract symbolic work. So that means if you're teaching math effectively, you are going to start the students with hands-on activities. Then you're going to be moving towards drawing or charting activities, something where they have to be a combination of hands-on and drawing what they've worked with hands-on. And then finally you'll move to the worksheets or the abstract symbolic. When you're working at a worksheet or abstract symbolic level, that's almost pure numbers. You're not doing a lot with the concrete or with drawings. If you put a worksheet near the beginning of a lesson, students have nothing concrete to attach their new knowledge to. So therefore, knowledge is temporary. All they're learning to do is the worksheet. There's nothing lasting about doing a worksheet. If you start with a concrete activity, on the other hand, a hands-on activity, that concrete activity provides a foundation for the abstract ideas that you're trying to teach. So when you're moving from concrete to representational to abstract, learning lasts longer. So what I don't really want to see at all is starting with a worksheet and moving to hands-on. That's the wrong process. Instead, I want to see students starting with hands-on, then moving towards a worksheet at the end. And ideally, the worksheet isn't what's being taught. The worksheet is being used as an assessment of what has been taught through concrete and representational activities. Some celebrations for what I saw in the lessons yesterday. I saw movement and action used as concrete activities at the beginning of the lesson. There's a word for this, a phrase for this. It's total physical response. And that's something that you might want to look up, Google it, and get some other ideas for how you can use movement and action, total physical response in your teaching. I saw some pre-bagged manipulatives, which I think is a very effective way of managing the manipulatives that you're using. It certainly saves a lot of time and stress on the teacher in terms of passing out small bits and pieces of materials. It's also a good way to store your materials so that they'll be available for next lesson. When you've gone through all that work of cutting little pieces out, you sure don't want to have to throw them away at the end. I saw both I can standards and vocabulary cards being used at the beginning of lessons, and again, that is something I want to see. I want to see you addressing the standard in kid-friendly ways at the beginning of the lesson, and I do want to see explicit language instruction, explicit vocabulary instruction. This is what you would have to do if you were teaching English language learners. You would have to teach vocabulary, not ask kids to remember vocabulary words that you think they already know. So we might as well use explicit language instruction with everyone because it's a best practice. And we get a lot of bang for our buck in terms of learning when we use explicit language instruction. I saw vocabulary flip cards being used for explicit language instruction. This is a little bit different take. The word is on the front and the picture and explanation are on the back. I saw games and activities used for social learning. Remember that more learning takes place in social contexts than it does in isolation. And so in both of these cases, these were activities that could have been done on a worksheet in isolation, but instead they were done in a social context where 3 or 4 people were working on the chart and talking about what they were doing and interacting together. And that piece is essential for your English language learners, and it's also extremely beneficial for your struggling students and at-risk students. I saw teacher-made manipulatives, and I should explain this one a little bit for the people who didn't see it. This is a long whiteboard that I think Shay picked up at Walmart, he said. And then he took electrical tape and marked the lines, just the base lines for the grids, just the axis lines, the y-axis and the x-axis. And then he left everything off, all the markings. Students put their own markings on for the months of the year and for the numbers, and then used magnetic pins to chart the graph and drew the lines between the pins. I think that is just totally worthy of Pinterest, and so kudos to Shay for putting that idea together. The electrical tape on the whiteboard is really a fine idea and makes that graph reusable throughout a graphing unit, and then when you're finished you can take the electrical tape off and use it for something else. Use the whiteboard for something else. I saw students creating graphs on graph paper, and again, what a strong strategy. Who needs worksheets? Isn't it stronger for students to create their own graphs? That's something that is a lifelong skill. So later on when they're adults and they need to chart something, it's easy for them to recall how to create a graph. If we spend our lives in worksheets, then what are we going to do for solving adult problems? I don't know of any worksheets to solve adult problems. But if we know how to create the graphs on our own, that is a lifelong skill. Again, I saw explicit vocabulary instruction again and again and again in all different ways, and I'm just excited that you're using explicit vocabulary instruction because that is what I expect in a lesson. I saw technology used to support instruction. I saw evidence of higher level thinking. I saw groups working together, analyzing the different polygons and determining what qualities they had in order to sort them. I saw extra mile, higher level thinking by having students classify polygons in a Venn diagram. I saw students working at a representational level, drawing pictures of what they had just made with paper manipulatives. Again, manipulatives are concrete. Drawing what you made is representational. I saw writing used as assessment. I saw pre-tests and post-tests. And by the way, that's a really good use of worksheets. Why use the worksheets as the main thrust of your lesson? Why not just give a post-test or a pre-test with one or two of the worksheets and have the main thrust of your lesson be concrete and semi-concrete? I saw foldables used in a new setting. I asked about this because I've now seen foldables 2 days in a row, and apparently it was Trish who has been teaching you how to use foldables, which is just wonderful. And the fact that you are transferring them to a different content area is also wonderful. That's what we want to see as VCSU instructors. We want to see that you're making connections between our classes and using strategies that you've learned in one class to support learning in another. I saw anchor charts, both student-created anchor charts and teacher-created anchor charts. I saw an emphasis on active engagement. And I know there are challenges to the way that I'm asking you to teach, because I'm asking you to rebuild a lesson to make it more engaging. I'm asking you to break old habits of teaching the worksheet, teaching the math page, teaching and having students work in isolation. I'm asking you to avoid worksheets. I'm asking you to avoid isolating assignments and instead focus on the kind of learning that happens socially. So I know that all of those challenges exist. I'm seeing evidence that some of you are rising to the challenge, and I guess I just want to encourage the rest of you and say, I know you can do it. So take these examples that your peers have been modeling and grab onto them and see what you can do to rebuild your next lesson to use some of these strategies and more and make them that much more effective. See you Tuesday.